to have a system to house all the data, right? So we can't have the famous data live on the mainframe forever because we have to transfer that data from the state. So this is we're trying to make sure we have a one uniform system to go access the data because right now there's like as Paul mentioned, there's Novus, there's BiSpeed, there's all these other systems that we need to consolidate and be accessible for people to use.
And from our perspective, the data that we were being asked to look up stretches back to, 2009, 2005. It's nice to be able to have an easy place to go to and search for that stuff. And in some cases, we're obligated to maintain.
Absolutely. So I know that in our case, we had one person that was here when Novus was around that had access that we were like, oh, where's this old contract? So it's nice to have one system to be able to go and see it instead of like seeing if somebody still had access to those old things.
So Janelle, at what point do you think you won't need it anymore then? I mean, you're going to 2024. Is that just?
I mean, it's where we house data. So like when we talk about like famous data, I think we have to have that for 7 years. So I think the last year of actual transactional data was 2019, but their payroll was still run through it until beginning of this year.
Correct.
So at least
7
years.
That's what I was thinking. So follow the retention schedule then?
Right. And so after that, we should be able to sunset it.
So just for ballpark. All right.
Mr. Chair, to that point though, I thought there were housing things on there that we will always need. Like, isn't this something that we're in essence always going to have? I don't know if it'll be with them, but aren't we always going to have a data lake, or no? Am I misunderstanding that?
It's more about, I think, from the SAP, the HR data standpoint. So if there's lawsuits or something that we would need to have that data, that may need to be longer for that. I'm not 100% sure on the data retention on that. But for other things, I think there was, in terms of the data retention schedule, I think it's 7 years.
Okay, thank you. Any final questions on the item? Seeing none, I will make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Macular. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The item is approved. Next item.
Next item, BC 2022-710, Department of Information Technology submitting an RFP exemption, which will result in award recommendation to Strategic Government Solutions Incorporated in the amount not to exceed $28,545 for identity as a service provided by Auto, effective upon signature of all parties for a period of 1 year, and recommending a contract with said RFP exemption.
Janelle Green. This is a contract for Auth0 services, which is an identity management system. This will allow additional layer of security on our applications, specifically the ones that we custom code. This will allow us to be able to seamlessly secure application authentication for users and making us less susceptible to attack.
Thank you, Janelle. Questions from the board? Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Boyle. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The item is approved. Next item.
Next item, BC 2022-711, Department of Information Technology submit an RFP exemption, which will result in a revenue-generating agreement with the City of Brooklyn, Ohio, in the amount not to exceed $9,659.52 for the GIS Story Map Collection Project, effective upon signature of all parties for a period of 1 year, and recommending an agreement with said RFP exemption.
Janelle Green. This is again, a revenue generating contract, which is different than what we've done for our GIS story map for the city of Brooklyn. This will be used for some marketing efforts for the city, for life and business in the city. This will include kickoff presentation, the work on the item, and the rollout of it when we work with the city, or when the team works with the city, in order to get this up and live for users to access.
Very good. Thank you, Janelle. Questions from the board? Seeing none, then I will make the motion to approve the item. Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Nicole English. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The item is approved. Next
Thank
item.
you.
Next item, BC 2022-712, Personnel Review Commission submitting an amendment to a contract with the Archer Company, LLC, for classification and compensation analysis for the period of December 5th, 2016 through December 4th, 2022, to extend the time period to December 4th, 2024, and for additional funds in the amount not to exceed $50,000.
Okay, we don't seem to have member here, so we're going to hold the item and move forward. Okay. Unless anyone has any comments? No? Okay, let's move on to the next item, please.
Next item, BC 2022-713, Office of the Medical Examiner, submitting an RFP exemption which will result in award of a master contract with various providers, being corrected to read in the total amount not to exceed $225,000 for a temporary forensic pathologist program relating to autopsies and death investigations, including a supplemental agreement with Panisha Pandey, MD, for the period October 24, 2022 through December 31st, 2023, and recommending a master contract with said RFP exemption with Charles Cantonese, MD, in the amount not to exceed $75,000. Carl J. Schmidt in the amount not to exceed $50,000. Manisha Pandey, DBA Forensic Pathologist LLC, in the amount not to exceed $50,000. Safish Chundan, DBA ISDP Consulting LLC, and the amount not to exceed $50,000.
Hugh Shannon, Medical Examiner's Office. So this is related to our loss of our forensic pathologists. These are certified forensic pathologists that have medical licenses that are active in Ohio, which is a requirement for them to fulfill the duties that would help us get over the period until we're able to replace the pathologists that we lost on a permanent basis. I don't anticipate that this contract will be in effect for the entire year next year, and the funds that are needed are going to be more than offset by the salaries that are currently on the vacancies that we are experiencing right now that will make up for the cost.
So Hugh, is this general fund? Coming out
Correct.
of your general fund? Okay. Are there questions from the board? Mr. McAleer?
Hugh, good morning. I think, according to the backup, there's 3 of the 4 are out of state. How, just in terms of logistics, how does that work? Are they, that's just where they live or their business? Are they really in Ohio? But how will that work when you guys need an autopsy? Is it gonna be more scheduled? They'll fly in?
So that's the general way that these are handled. We'll schedule out a few months of time. They'll fly in. The expenses are kind of built into the charge per autopsy is how it's being done. So we won't be invoicing for hotels and travel and all that. It'll be a flat rate per autopsy that they perform while they're in town. And then, again, we won't schedule too far out as we don't know when we'll be able to replace the pathologist on a permanent basis. Right now, we're scheduling through January right now.
And it's $1,300, I believe, per autopsy, right?
Correct.
So we lost 3, I believe, right, to Franklin County.
Correct.
Where are we in terms of trying to replace those 3? Have we posted? Have we made offers?
It's been posted. One of the kind of caveats, we held a phone conference with most of the major metropolitan areas in Ohio's coroners, medical examiners' offices. Dr. Gilson's hope at that time was not to take any positions from Ohio offices. In essence, what happened is that the staffing issues that Franklin County was experiencing were simply transferred to our office because they offered, an extra $100,000 salary and, working conditions, that were very favorable. We did not want to pass that along because all that's going to do is perpetuate the problem until we get to a point where somebody who's unable and unequipped to compete are going to be left holding the bag. So what we're trying to do is identify candidates outside the state of Ohio, continue to prop and bolster the death investigation system in Ohio. We've reached out to the governor's office. We've reached out to the legislature to come up with some strategies that will help us recruit and retain forensic pathologists for Ohio. Obviously, this is a crisis that goes beyond the borders of Ohio, and we can't solve the entire nation's problem there aren't enough certified forensic pathologists in the United States to do death investigation properly. What we are trying to do is to minimize the impacts on Ohio and get our work done in a timely fashion. We've identified one candidate that we believe will come in starting in January. They haven't received their certification yet. They're still in the training program, but they've agreed, I believe, in principle to stay on. We received 2 other applications in the last 2 weeks. Those are also folks who are completing their training in other offices around the country. And I expect, and this is basically how the cycle goes, as the training programs start to wind down, more and more of these newly trained pathologists will be looking for full-time employment. So we'll get more and more interest. It's not ideal to replace people who've had 5, 15, 25 years of experience with people who are just coming out of their certification process. That would not be our first choice, but again, we're in a situation where I don't know how much we can afford to be choosy about, well.
So I have a question. So you will not accept an application from Summit or Hamilton or Montgomery or any of those other people? Interesting. Very good. Any final questions?
We're now, Hugh, right, with what council approved at the request of the executive, competitive though, right? I mean, we're up there with Franklin now, right, in top of the state?
Correct.
In terms of pay?
Correct.
Mr. Boyle?
The matter that was held raises the same specter in this situation here. I mean, if we're gonna hire a consultant MD pathologist from Cedar Park, Texas, to write the autopsy, aren't we now finding ourselves in a situation where presumably he or she would necessarily, I mean, that issue still exists.
To some extent, the amount of casework that would come out will be much less likely. They've been focused on cases that are not likely to be called for trial.
It's a dangerous path. But I hear you. I mean, it is a scientific endeavor. I had kind of pointed comments to the IT folks when they presented about issues that they were having with succession plan. And I'm well aware that the work done by the medical examiners is professional level pathologist, MD type work, but it's pretty clear that our work situation in a post-COVID era has changed drastically. And to that extent, I think we as a county, we as a government have to kind of figure out what we're doing, because I think just throwing money at the problem and hiring consultants is a really dangerous path to go down. I get it, it's a crisis situation, but that troubles me. The other question that I assume, I'm certainly not smart enough to be the first one to say this, but we have used our position and our proximity to major medical facilities here, oftentimes to our benefit. Have we partnered with the clinic? Is that something that can happen? I mean, it's just there. You know, we have lots and lots of good hospitals here that presumably have pathologists on staff. I mean, have we looked at that as something? in an emergency type, and the answer from law or someone else might not be possible, I don't know, but, I mean, if we're really getting into a crisis situation, I think we've got to kind of start looking at things rather than just randomly hiring people from Texas and Minnesota and Michigan to show up here and do this work.
So there are a couple of things that are, we'll unpack there. There are, yes, world-renowned medical facilities in the area. They do have staffs that have pathologists on board. They don't have forensic pathologists, which is the specialty that we're talking about. There are differences that are important when we're doing death investigation. It's a possibility in times of more dire crisis than we're in at the moment. We've talked about that in cases where we would have, say, major mass fatality events that we may need to draw on folks with pathology, not necessarily forensic pathology, but pathology experience. We're not there yet. Again, these are not random choices. These folks, again, are certified, trained forensic pathologists with medical licensing in Ohio. There aren't a ton of them outside of those that are already working in offices in Ohio. So some of these folks had been working in Franklin County when Franklin County experienced the loss of medical staff. So they're familiar with Ohio procedures and laws and things like that. Again, we triage the cases. Dr. Gilson and Dr. Fila, who's the chief deputy, triage the cases every morning. When we have these contract pathologists in the office, they're assigned cases that, again, based on their multiple years of experience, are not likely to be called for jury trials in the future. Car accidents, drug overdoses, things like that, that are much less likely to come before the judiciary here. It's not a perfect system. Again, we're doing our best to make do with the situation.
Okay, thank you, Hugh. Jim, follow-ups?
No, I mean, I think this will be an ongoing issue, not just with the medical examiner, but with lots and lots of our
Sure.
staff members. And I think from a clearly HR, PRC type perspective, we have got to assess where we are as a county
Sure.
so that we can continue to function. I mean,
Seems
these
like
are
they're
real issues.
taking the steps now, so. All right, well, good. We'll see no further questions then. I will make a motion to approve the item as amended for the amount and also the funding source of general fund. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Boyle. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The item is approved.
Thank
Next
you.
item.
Next item, BC 2022-714, is being corrected to read, Department of Public Safety and Justice Services submitting an RFP exemption which will result in award recommendation to Mental Health Services for Homeless Persons Incorporated, DBA Frontline Services, and the amount not to exceed $10,000 for evidence-based trauma-informed treatment of child victims and witness of violence in connection with the Defending Childhood Initiative project for the period October 1st, 2022 through September 30th, 2023, and recommend a contract with said RFP exemption.
Good morning, Mary Beth Vaughn from Public Safety, and as the clerk read, these are for therapy services for children who have either been victims of crime or have witnessed crime, who are part of our Defending Childhood Initiative. This is a grant-funded project, and that is why the contracts are going back to October 1st. We did need to wait once we received the grant award for the appropriations to be put in place so that we could move forward on the contracts. And this is a payer of last resort. Frontline would first take and bill either the child's insurance or Medicaid, but if there were no other options, then this grant will take and pay for their therapy services.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Questions?
I mean, I know do we know where VOCA is going to go? I know we got hit a couple of years back.
We do not know. We were fortunate that this year we were whole, everything, it didn't grow, but we weren't cut this year.
I'm sure you keep your finger on it.
Yeah. Jill's very good about that.
Any final questions, Councilman?
Yes.
Please.
Do we have any information on what percentage of the cases actually do get paid for by any of these other funding sources before it comes to us?
I will look into that and get back to you. I will let you know that some of us will be on vacation for the next few days, but we will get that information to you as soon as possible.
Okay, fine.
Well, Frontline's also going to have some folks.
Okay.
Thanks.
Final questions? Seeing none, I will make a motion to approve the item as amended. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Miller. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The item is approved. Next item.
Next item, BC 2022-715, is being corrected to read Department of Public Safety and Justice Services submitting an RFP exemption, which will result in award recommendation to Mental Health Services for Homeless Persons Incorporated, DBA Frontline Services, in the amount not to exceed $226,151 for Defending Childhood Central Intake and Assessment Services in connection with the fiscal year 2023 Victims of Crime Act grant for the period October 1st, 2022 through September 30th, 2023, and recommending a contract with said RFP exemption.
Good morning, Mary Beth Vaughn, and this is another contract that is part of the same Defending Childhood Initiative program. This portion is actually when the child is identified as been either a victim or a witness to crime. Frontline actually does the initial intake, and then if the situation warrants, they will do the assessment and make the recommendation to somebody to provide the therapy services.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Questions? Seeing none, I will make a motion to approve the item as amended. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Paul Porter. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The item is approved as amended. Next item.
Thank you.
Next item, BC 2022-716, Sheriff's Department recommending award on RQ 10959 and enter into purchase order with Hall Public Safety Company in the amount not to exceed $83,699.62 for the purchase of materials for build-outs for 2 new 2023 Ford Transit vans.
Chris Costin, Sheriff's Department. As you recall, we came back in September for the purchase of 2 transport vans through Ford. These are the actual build-outs for these vans.
Thank you, Chris. Questions from the board?
So some of the build-outs, I could get detail, but you know, like the lights and the bars, the safety units in the van.
Build-out is 83, how much?
Vans, I'll have to look with you, probably around 50,000.
Costs more to build them out than.
I'll get back to you on that.
Chris, is this to haul prisoners and stuff?
Yeah, there's 2 of them on these. Yeah, there's 2 of them on here. But yeah, there's transport vans to haul prisoners back and forth.
Reinforcements, I'm sure, yeah.
Yeah, we see the same thing through Fleet when we get them in and then we have to build them out. The bars that separate all sorts of
I mean, now it's kind of running through, when I found out it was 2, it kind of divided.
computers.
Okay, seeing no further questions, I will make a motion to approve the item. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Lee Tucker. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The item is approved. Next item.
Next item, BC 2022-717, Department of Workforce Development submitting amendment to a contract with Linking Employment Abilities and Potential, LEAP, for the in-school youth program for students with disabilities for the Comprehensive Case Management Employment Program, Employment Education and Training Service for young adults in connection with the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act for the period of July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2023, to change the terms effective July 1st, 2022, and for additional funds in the amount not to exceed $139,000.
Good morning, Mary Kelly from Department of Workforce Development. This is to allow LEAP to continue to provide services in 2 Cleveland Municipal School District high schools, James B. Road and Campus International, for 30 high school seniors with severe physical or cognitive developmental disabilities. The program provides case management, career pathway development, high school diploma attainment and skill development, employment and supportive services. The primary goals are basically to get students in the program to to improve their skills and create career goals. They complete work experience and identify strengths and growths in areas for preparation for unsubsidized employment. And also, they receive either their diploma or GED or matriculate on to the next grade.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Questions from the board? Seeing no questions, I will make a motion to approve the item. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Boyle. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The item is approved. Next item.
Thank you.
Next item, BC 2022-718, Department of Health and Human Services, Community Initiatives Division, Office of Homeless Services, submitting an amendment to a contract with Joseph's Home for temporary housing and supportive services for medically fragile men experiencing homelessness for the period July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022, to extend the time period to June 30th, 2023, to change the terms effective July 1st, 2022, and for additional funds in the amount not to exceed $267,547.
Erin Reardon, Office of Homeless Services. This is an amendment to our contract with Joseph's Home. As stated, they provide shelter for medically fragile men. So this would be men who were in the hospital, who are homeless, hospitalized, but were able to be released from the hospital, not well enough to go directly back into shelter.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Questions from the board? Councilman, please.
Do we have any intention to engage in a similar program with the corresponding women's home?
Funny you should mention that. So you know about the existence of Mary's Home, correct? They actually applied for our most recent RFP, but due to funding restrictions, we weren't able to fund them. So right now, it's just funding Joseph's Home.
So could you say more about what these funding restrictions are?
It's just the amount of levy funding that we have, because we use levy for our shelter that's not covered by HUD or ESG. And so the amount, we have a stagnant amount of money that we get from all of our funding sources, so we didn't have enough to cover them.
So why wouldn't you do some kind of a split so that each gets some?
Well, this is for a contract that we have historically funded at that amount, so they kind of have their budget built in for that. I mean, going forward, that's something that we could consider, or, we could get more money. That would be great.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mackler.
Aaron, good morning. What is the amount that Mary's Home requested in the bid?
Don't remember off the top of my head. But this amendment is for a separate procurement process, just to be clear. So this is not making it an award on our RFP. We issued an RFP, and then going forward, we're talking about Mary's Home applying for that. Joseph's Home and Mary's Home applying for that RFP. But for this is just an amendment of the existing contract.
So Joseph's Home, they weren't part of the bidding process, they just got a contract extension because they're a current provider?
Correct, yes. So I was just saying, to Councilman Miller's question, Mary's Home did apply for our current RFP.
And I think this is something that council members have specifically asked over the last couple of years, because if we fund these type of services for Joseph's Home to serve the men, I mean, we know there's a need out there, equal need for, it might be less of a population, but the same need exists for women to receive these services. So if you could you follow up with us and just let us know what their proposal was and how many people they would serve? Because I know council has asked about this in the past.
Sure, I can do that.
We funded, council funded with the veteran services money, both Joseph's Home and Mary's Home for veteran services, for homeless services. But yeah, if you can just get us that information, please.
Sure, I can do that.
Great. Any final questions from the board? Seeing none, I will make a motion to approve the item. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Miller. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The item is approved.
Thank you.
Next item?
Next item, BC 2022-719, County Executive-Elect, submitting an RFP exemption, which will result in an award recommendation with said RFP exemption.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Eric Whoopser. I am with the Office of the Transition for the variety of tasks for the transition. She brings a particular expertise in the area of safety and
Contract is with Catrice. She's got it listed as an LLC in the contract. So, and I just figured this out. So I think we need to further amend it to say the Catrice Williams CLE Group LLC. So in the agenda, it's written as her name. She's, you know, the sole principal, but the contract itself has the
Understood.
LLC on there.
Okay, and we're also gonna amend it as general fund as well, I'm assuming, correct?
Yes, this is general fund
Yeah.
through the allocation that council put aside.
Fine, it's general fund either way. All right, good. Thank you. All right, questions? Trevor, please.
This is probably for you, Paul, but I know, just because it's only been a week, right? But was she able to register with the Inspector General and everything? Did that?
Correct. All the registrations occurred and everything's been fully reviewed. So even though this was a walk-on, the contract is ready to approve in the system after the meeting.
And if I could, I just want to say thank you to Mr. Porter, to Jared from the Law Department and council staff. We know this is out of the ordinary course being walked on with the nature of the transition coming up so quickly. We are very grateful for the work to get this on today's agenda.
Understandable. Great. Any final questions?
Move approval.
Move for approval. We have a second. All in favor to approve as amended, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The item is approved. Thank you.
Very much, appreciate it.
Moving on to consent agenda, correct?
Consent agenda items are BC 2022-720 to BC 2022-722. BC 2022-720 is being amended to read, corrected, no additional funds required.
Okay. Committee members, please let me know if you have any questions on any of those couple of items. Doesn't appear to be any questions. Okay, therefore, I will make a motion to approve today's consent agenda item as amended and listed. Is there a second?
Second.
That was a toss-up. Second to Ms. Lee Tucker. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The item is approved. Moving on to other business.
There is no other business?
Is there any public comment?
No public comment?
I will
Mr.
make a
Chairman.
Oh, yes, please, sir.
I have a question.
Yes.
And the question is regarding that we normally would have a meeting that would fall on Monday, December the 26th, which is the day after Christmas, and Monday, January 2nd, the day after New Year's. I don't know whether those become county holidays following the, and whether we plan to meet on Tuesday or whether one or both those meeting dates would be canceled. Can you provide any enlightenment on that question?
So we did consult about this, Councilman Miller, and in years past, that meeting the week between Christmas and New Year's has typically been canceled, and then I think we would hold the meeting on Tuesday, the 3rd in January. So we would have the meeting the week before Christmas, not the meeting the 26th or the 27th, and then we would meet again Tuesday, the 3rd. Would that schedule work?
Works for me.
Personally, I'd like to be here the day after Christmas, but
I
that's
just
okay.
I just want to know what the deal is so that I can plan accordingly.
Absolutely.
Feel
Are
free
you
to-
good with that,
Feel
Mike?
free to join me the day after, but anyways, yes, I'm fine, I'm just kidding. All right, so we're gonna formally, we don't have to vote on that, we're just gonna cancel that. Okay, great, excellent point, thank you. Any final questions? No? All right, we're good, thank you. We adjourned.
Move
Did
to
we not?
adjourn.
I did not adjourn?
Nope.
Second, all in favor to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, we are adjourned. Thank you.